call the meeting to order, and Doug, call the roll.
Chair Holmquist.
Here.
Ms. Fallett.
Here.
Mr. Homburg.
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Chapman. And Mr. Grice.
Here.
And Alder DePula is excused.
All right. Item 3 is an approval of the minutes from October 13th, 2025. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
All right, any corrections? I'd say none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, minutes have passed. There's no change in the order of business tonight. Appearances, if there is anybody here to appear on an item that's not on the agenda, this would be the time to do that. Anybody that's here to appear for the public hearing section on an item that's here, it's best that we get to the public hearing section, allow that proposal to be able to share a little information before you present, so that way sometimes questions get answered. So we'll hold on that. Doug, anybody online?
I believe everybody online is related to an application. If not, could you please identify? I'm not seeing it.
All right. We can close the appearance section. There is no unfinished business tonight. And that moves us on to 7A, which is a public hearing on a request by the Strength Collective LLC for approval of a zoning permit for a new use at 6330 Cops Avenue, Suite C. This is case number 223-2025. You may recall we had this on our last agenda, and there was a address difference, and so we realized that it would be best that they come back through this process, so it can be very short. Doug, instead of having the applicant during the public hearing, can you give a brief overview, and then we'll move on to action?
I'd be happy to. So this use is a gym at the 6330 Cops Avenue. As mentioned, this is just a different suite within the same building, same location, and the materials that are included in this packet have been updated appropriately as well, and the notices were resent with the correct information. So this is a direct kind of personal training model with weights and sort of a focus here on the strength training of that specifically, and a 24/7 gym that would be open via key fob access, and expected kind of 8 to 12 visitors per day to start with, increasing up to 30 to 35. Property zone, community design district, and appears appropriate.
Okay. And do we have anybody as an applicant?
We do. We're joined by Martha from the Strength Collective on Zoom as well.
Hi, Martha. Is there anything that you wanted to add during the public hearing section? If not, don't feel obligated.
Nope, nothing that I need to add. I think Douglas did a great job.
Okay. All right, we can close the public hearing section, move on to 7B, which is the consideration of action on a request by the Strength Collective LLC for approval of a zoning permit for new use at 6330 Cops Avenue, Suite C. This is case number 223-2025. Doug, brief overview, and then we get on to a motion.
Nothing else really from kind of that overview. The recommendation is still for approval with the same 3 conditions as were considered in the last meeting.
All right, is there a motion? Approval. Second?
Second.
All right, is there any questions that staff, members of the commission have? Applicant, any questions that you have? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, item has been passed, and thank you for coming back, Martha. Enjoy.
Thanks for having me.
And we can move on to, so 7C and 7D will be held for a future date. We wanted in the agenda anticipating that it would be ready for this meeting, but they weren't. So we'll hold those off for another time. We can go on to 7E, which is a public hearing for Galloway Companies, and a request for a consideration of a general development plan, or GDP, for the site located between 5600 Gishel Drive and 1709 West Broadway. This is for a mixed-use development, and this is case number 225-2025. And Steve, you're up. And again, during the public hearing section, it's great if you can give an overview of the project, what it is that you're hoping to do. That way, I know we have at least one public member that wants to speak. It would be ideal if you can give a brief overview. That way, they have something to respond to.
Sure.
Sometimes some of their questions are answered during the presentation.
Sure, yep, be happy to do. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everybody. Do you have are you able to pull up the plan? kind of weird. I feel like I know, I feel like I'm looking this way, but I need to, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's actually start with just the site plan, maybe Doug, and just, I can kind of give a quick overview and summary of how I got to where I'm at. So as many of you remember, we got the Topgolf project approved about a year ago. They're under construction now. They're planning to be open August of 2026, and they're on schedule, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule right now. We'll see how the winter is to them, but so far everything is going as planned on that project. At the time that we got the project approved, the lending environment was marginally different than it is now. It's not a lot better now, but it's a little bit better. And one of the things that I kind of made clear was I did not want to, I didn't know what I was going to do with the excess land. I wasn't ready to site plan anything, but I wasn't really interested in letting the economy dictate the site plan. So we really took a lot of time to kind of think about what did we really want here. And, you know, this is the last, in my mind, really large piece of developable land in Monona. So it's important to us that we do this right. So we got one shot, and we want to make sure we do it right. So I'm very interested to get some feedback from this commission tonight as to, you know, initial thoughts on the direction that we're heading. We're very, very early, and again, just have started site planning things right now. And so some of the key things that we thought about before we even really put pencil to paper was, you know, right now, you know, WPS is very instrumental in the design of this project, and right now they've got a grand entrance. You drive down WPS Drive, and the first thing you see is WPS, and so it was important to us that we preserve
We're
that.
gonna have to pause for a second.
We can't close the door. It has to be an open door meeting.
So anyways, it was important to us that we kept their viewpoint strong, that they had a strong presence. They're the largest employer in Monona. They intend to continue to be here long-term. They've reinvested nearly $10 million into the main office building, renovating it and moving their corporate staff there. So they're kind of committed to being a corporate steward of Monona and being here for the long haul. And we want to kind of emphasize that and take advantage of that commitment. And the other thing is we didn't want to just pack a bunch of buildings in here. We wanted it to be a place that people felt like they could live and congregate and also make it a place. It's a big site. We have the ability to put a lot of units here, but we don't want it to feel like there's a lot of units here. So with the current down the street, we had a lot of success engaging the community and engaging the residents with the Grand Crossing Park. It was kind of a marquee element to our project. It helped us lease units. I think it brought the community to our project. And so we thought, you know, one of the first things we should consider is donating a piece of the land or figuring some way to get the city a piece of land here to be, you know, and have the city have an anchor kind of park as part of our project that we could build around. And so what you see here is a public square that could be numerous different things, that is a little over an acre in size, surrounded by four, essentially 7-story buildings. They're, you know, 6 floors of two floors of concrete with 5 floors of wood up. To give you a concept, it's really, one of the things I struggle with is just understanding the site plan because it is big. But to give you an idea of concept, that park is about 2.5 times the size of the Grand Crossing Park next to current one. So it is a very large green space. And we've been talking to staff and parks about what do we do? You know, what can we do here that's different than current? What can we do here that's, you know, not only good for the residents of this project, but good for the city of Monona? How do we draw, how can we get the residents of Monona drawn to this project? And so those were kind of the two elements that we designed it around. What you see is, again, four 7-story buildings. The 2 buildings to the east are what we would plan to start with first on the east and sort of develop west. The A1 building to the north is proposed as just, you know, traditional market rate apartments. And I believe that's about 100 just under 190 units, and then the building to the south is a senior project. And when I say senior, I don't mean assisted living, I mean independent, active adult living, 55 and older, not deed restricted to anything specific. No in-care home services, no medical type services on site, but really just kind of a building catered to that active adult community, which is something that really doesn't exist in Monona, but doesn't really exist well in Madison anywhere. If you look at a lot of other bigger markets, Denver, Minneapolis, Chicago, there are buildings well designed for active adults, they perform very well. So we see a really big need for that. If you look at what we have at current 1 and current 2, we have a big portion of residents who have sold their homes in Monona or wanted to sell their homes in Monona, but want to stay in Monona. They want to get rid of that, the daily chores, the elements of, clearing the grass and snow, but they don't want to leave Monona. They want a place to be here. They just don't want the hassle. So we see a big need for it here, that's what we're site planning. For really pure master planning purposes, we've proposed a mirror building to the west, but I think the market is going to dictate what those end up being. Those would be future phases that we would build once we got the first phase under construction to the east. Peter, do you want to maybe run through the rest of the slides since you know the kind of the semantics of the? Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Just for clarity.
Sure.
You've said 7 stories a number of times, but everything I see is 6.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1 floor of underground parking. I count that as 1.
Oh, okay,
And
all
then
right.
6 up.
You said, okay.
So,
All right,
yeah.
thanks.
Sorry, I should have clarified that.
6 in both, great.
1 floor of underground parking that's concrete, 1 floor of spancrete up, and then 5 floors of wood.
Okay, thanks.
So 6 above ground. Any other questions before I let Peter kind of take over and finish going through the PDF? Great. Peter, do you want to run through the rest of the slides quick?
Yeah, sure thing, Steve.
Great.
So I'll briefly go through the floor plans for the A1 and the B1 buildings. That would be the phase 1. And then I'll briefly go through some exterior imagery we have for both those buildings.
Yeah, Peter, I think we can probably skip the floor plans. Why don't we just maybe kind of keep it high level, talk through the elevations,
Okay.
and then, maybe some of the viewpoints from the park, what it could look like, and then we can kind of open it up and talk about unit design at the next meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good. So here are the 4 primary elevations of the A1 and the B1 building. The top elevation is the north elevation of the A1 building. You can see that we've taken a pretty long facade and really tried to break it up into 3 smaller buildings, sort of a brown building on the left, then a big gap, then a white building, and then a gap, and then another gray building. So it's trying to really reduce the scale and the mass by making it look like 3 attached buildings. You can go to the next slide, please, Doug. So here's a view standing in the park. This is looking northeast. This is the west end cap of the A1 building. You can see on the ground floor here, the A1 building, we have 12,000 square feet of retail. The very corner could be an opportunity for a restaurant, which would be able to maybe take advantage of an outdoor patio to the west of that where we have all the blue umbrellas. Next slide, please. So this is stepping back more into the center of the park. You can still see that same sort of end cap of the A1 building on the left. But you can also see the B1 building and how that helps frame the park on the right. The lobby for the B1 building is on the first floor in between the yellow food truck and the blue food cart. Next slide, please. Lastly, here's the view looking southeast on Broadway. You can see A1 building on the left and kind of in the foreground with its outdoor patio. And you can see the B1 building in the background that helps frame the park, which is off to the right. Again, this is kind of shows the north facade of the A1 building, how we try to break it up to make it look like 3 independent buildings that might be attached, but give it sort of more of a vertical scale to what's otherwise a very horizontal building. I can turn it back to you, Steve.
Do you want to talk about the view corridor, kind of the window wall corridor we added to the center of the building, Peter, and how that would work?
Yeah, sure. You can see a large gap between sort of where the brown building ends and where the white building begins. Right there, we've actually set the building facade back all the way to the hallway corridor, so it's about 20 foot back from the front facade. So it really sort of shows how those buildings are separate. It's not just a change in material. We actually have a 20-foot kind of recess there, and that does two things. I think from the exterior, it helps really separate those two buildings visually, but it also in the floor plan daylights the corridor. It was otherwise a very long, kind of dark hallway.
Yeah, there you can kind of see it in the center right there. Yeah, so again, I think, the main thing we're looking for feedback on tonight is this density is acceptable for the site? Is there support for this type of density here? The roads as designed would prominently become public roads. So our goal is to connect, right now there is really no connection. It's all blocked off from, everybody from One City School cannot really get through from Ingle Street all the way to Gisholt Street. So we would open up Gisholt Street from east to west all the way through. People would be able to travel literally from floor to core through Gisholt Street all the way across to behind Besa and back out to the light. Right now that connection does not exist, as well as kind of traverse around. The public will be able to traverse around the park as they see fit. And then all the internal kind of roads that are in parking that is specific to the project would remain private. The only thing that would be public is anything that is really sort of public serving. And so, I think what we're looking for mainly tonight is feedback on the density, the scale of the project, the park location, design-ish, and road design. We've got a lot of work to do on the buildings themselves, how they lay out. The form and function and physical layout of those could yet change a little bit as we continue to work on this, but we just didn't want to get too far with the overall concept plan before we got feedback from Plan Commission. And then I think the only other thing is WPS and Topgolf are very, very supportive of this project. But we do need to fix some concerns they have with access. Right now, they have a sort of a grand entrance, 2 to 3 lane entrance in and out, and they are not 100% on board with limiting that access point, sort of as we currently have designed, without some other alternative options. So that is definitely something we will continue to work on with them. So, all right, I think that's all I have.
Perfect. And Doug, is there anybody online for the public hearing section?
We have an appearance here in person. Michelle, yes.
And anybody else registered?
Nobody else registered that I'm aware of.
All right. Michelle, if you want to come up, you can, the mic should work. If you can just state your name, your address, and then you can share your feedback.
Sure, do I have a time limit?
We generally allow a little bit more time, given that
Okay.
I see you have something prepared, so you should be.
I wrote it before I came here because I'm a working person.
Yeah.
I printed out all the reports, I've looked at them online. So my name's Michelle Mahalik, I live at 1811 Conservation Place. Those are the green and white condos right across the street from this development that's proposed. I'm not sure how things work in the city of Monona because I'm a City of Madison resident. I've contacted my alder. I have concerns about zoning. I'm concerned about the lighting. I'm concerned about the increased traffic. I'm concerned that this is a field that has been there. And now when I look out on my window when I'm doing dishes, instead of seeing a nice field where kids were playing flag football or people would walk their dogs in the wintertime, now it's just a big pile of dirt. I know I can't slow down this top flight development for all the golfers who are coming, but the people who live in my neighborhood are like working class folks. They're not here tonight, except for my beloved neighbor, Shoda. And I'm really disappointed. I live in the city of Madison, but I spend all my money in Monona. I go to the grocery store down the block. I go to Quick Trip, I get my gasoline, I participate in the 5K, I don't do the 20K every May here around the lake. I spend my money here, and I haven't seen much come out of the development of the condos right off of Bridge in Broadway. Those are like vacant. I don't know who's gonna live there. I don't know who's gonna live here. I don't know how much it's gonna cost to live here. I appreciate Doug for getting back to me with all the information, because my city alder didn't think there was a zoning concern. But when I'm looking out my window, I'm gonna see this huge development, and the only benefit of a 7-story building is to block the big lights from the golf driving range. Why couldn't we develop that on the other side of the Beltline? Like by the kitchen supplies company and Walmart. Like, this is where I live. So I think it's gonna also increase calls for service. I feel like Monona's turning into East Washington Avenue. It's already busy enough. We've had issues with the city of Madison police officer doing a chase on Monona or Broadway there, getting injured. I saw that for another proposal. You guys want to get rid of some more green space, the rare green space we have on Broadway where officers sit and will patrol. I want to keep that green. I want them to sit there. I like seeing the police. People speed a lot on that street already. So I think this will increase it. What else can I tell you? I wish that we would have been contacted. I wish that we would have had notice about this development. And that our families aren't being taken into consideration with this. So I want some more clarification on why residents were not informed and what steps are going to be taken to improve communication moving forward. So that's what I got.
All right, thank you, Michelle. And did you want to register to speak tonight?
Come on, show it up.
If not, this will not be the last time that this is discussed at this meeting, so don't feel pressured.
May I just speak for a couple minutes?
Yep, welcome, come up to the mic. Just state your name and your address for the record, and then you can share your thoughts as well.
Think about all the stuff we talk about on our walks.
Hi. My name is Shoda Duffy. I live at 5335 Lake Park Boulevard, which is also part of the condos directly across from the proposed development. I have been favorably impressed with a lot of the development that's happened in Monona, like Current, for instance. The park is beautiful there. I guess, it is, I feel like our residential neighborhood being directly across the street, there is a lot of impact to us, and I know that being a separate city, we only have kind of so much that we can say about it, but definitely there are concerns in our development in our neighborhood, especially about Topgolf. I know that your studies that you did said the traffic wouldn't be too much more, but of course we're concerned about the lights, the noise. Are there going to be people out there until 2 in the morning? I know it's a done deal, but yeah, it's definitely a big change and a big shift from the neighborhood. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to see the proposals, for more residential development. I mean, I think it is needed. It's just a big scale, so I'm glad to be here to see all of that. But we do have some, just some concerns, I guess. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. And anybody else that show up online?
There's a couple names that I don't recognize, so if anybody online is here to speak, could you please indicate now?
All right, seeing none, we can close the public hearing section. We can move on to item 7F, which is the pre-hearing conference for Galloway Companies on the request for consideration of the General Development Plan, or GDP, for the site located between 5600 Gishel Drive and 1709 West Broadway for a mixed-use development, case number 225-2025.
Thank you. So as mentioned, the proposal here tonight is a mixed-use development including both residential commercial elements near WPS Drive and West Broadway. total of 4 buildings are proposed, including a 45,000 square foot public park or square. These parcels are zoned Community Design District, CDD, which does allow the applicant to pursue the Planned Community Development approach, the PCD, and that's where this general development plan comes out of this evening. So this is the sort of high-level master plan for the overall development, and we would get into some of the more specifics in the second phase with the precise implementation plan. So the overall site is 12.42 acres as proposed here, and as the applicant mentioned, they're seeking feedback on the overall GDP, planning to return with that to be updated, as well as potentially the PIP for the first phase as well. So as far as the zoning and land use, the 2016 comprehensive plan classifies this as commercial use in both current and future land use maps. The adjacent neighbor here being Topgolf, that is expected to open in the fall of 2026. And this is really the opportunity for the reimagination and repositioning of the western portion of the WPS campus, as well as the older office buildings along Gishalt Drive. So the applicant does commit to retail or service space at the base of the building, which is going to create that destination and align with the vision of the comprehensive plan. Also worth mentioning is that the city is about to undertake the update of that comprehensive plan, as well as corridor studies for both Broadway and Monona Drive, where it's expected that these sites are going to be discussed in more detail, and the ability and how we can accommodate the need for housing across different product types and integrate as well with the existing uses. The proposal this evening includes market rate apartment units as well as senior apartments that would be 55 plus. As mentioned, these would be independent living and not any assisted living or anything. So it would be more of a traditional 55 plus age restricted active living opportunity there. The comprehensive plan does discuss, the 2016 comp plan does discuss the aging population of the city, as well as the empty nester cohort that we have, and these offer an opportunity for those to downsize and to remain in the community as well. And a couple other elements of the, or parts of the land use element of the comp plan call out sustainable redevelopment projects and efficient infill developments as well. So it's recommended at this early point this evening that the Commission discuss the proposed mix, the proximity to commercial amenities, the overall location, and how this proposed project can support those goals, and any feedback specifically about the land use or sort of the future vision, especially for this corridor. As far as the site design, typically the standards would be that all sites are expected to cover 30% of the site in open green space. The metrics that are included this evening show that 33.4% of the site is included or is to be open green space. I believe that includes the circa 1 acre public park, but that would just be something to clarify. That public square or park is really a central gathering space for the development that gives an opportunity for outdoor recreation. I think that's definitely an element the applicant would like feedback on this evening from the Commission. Certainly expecting an intense use, pretty similar to Grand Crossing Park, recognizing the need for some, the safe pedestrian connectivity through that as well, but also opportunity for programming to make that really a destination, an amenity both for residents of this project nearby, but also the city as a whole. So the setbacks, the proposal here has them really sort of focused along West Broadway, close to the property line there, with the retail and outdoor space at the ends, sort of facing one another, closest to the public park and closest to that entryway there on the ground floor. That leads to the site circulation, which is certainly going to be critical for this, just recognizing the use, the adjacent uses as well, including WPS. There are a number of light-controlled intersections, most notably the current WPS drive, but also other opportunities potentially to connect through to Bridge over by the base of development, but also to the west as well, sort of coming off of Gishalt there as well. One point to note here is that the site plan as currently shown does include part of the One City Schools property, so that would certainly be something to discuss and consider for future developments as well. One of the discussions that has already happened is sort of the circulation through the park, how that can be, those conflicts can be potentially managed, but also how angled parking, for example, could potentially assist with that, possibly a one-way system and things like that that could really help navigate the flow through that area. And certainly a discussion point this evening would be the possibility or the need for a traffic impact analysis, and something if that would be useful for the commission for future review. Certainly something to discuss this evening and make that request. Pedestrian connections are accounted for. There's the existing sidewalk along West Broadway that would connect into the development here, that would make the retail attractive and also connect into the park there as well. And then also just recognizing the timing and the scale of this project. There are improvements that are expected along West Broadway as part of a reconstruction project there as well that's within the next 5 years, which most likely would have some pedestrian bike improvements as well. So potentially how this could tie into that is important. There's a lot of discussion in the staff report about parking. I won't go into too much of the detail there, certainly recognizing some of the mix might be changing, especially with phase 2. But at a high level, it's the development as proposed is very close and actually just exceeds the city standards for parking. A few assumptions are made there, of course, just to sort of better understand the retail use for one, the commercial use that would be there. But of note, that of course does not include the park. So just sort of a consideration there as to the potential attractiveness of that and sort of folks coming in by vehicle for that. But also with that, I think there's also discussion with the age-restricted use, the senior apartments, about potentially lowering the parking standards there, as was done most recently over on East Broadway as part of the North Point GDP for that second phase, and some metrics are included in that in the staff report for reference. Certainly the non-vehicular transportation is also important, bicycle parking, the connectivity to the Madison Metro routes, and ability to sort of move people through the space is also important. Of note, there is a Madison Metro stop right here on West Broadway, very close to this. Architecture and massing, as mentioned, sort of shows the 6-story buildings above grade. The applicant did a good job sort of explaining the details of that, but the intent here is to sort of break up the buildings, break up the massing, and sort of give an impression of different buildings. That's achieved through some of the recessed balconies and the different materials that are used, which suggests some step backs and sort of ways to break down the massing could certainly be considered, but recognize this is pretty early on as well. And building on some previous discussions, I think some materials boards sooner rather than later, I think would certainly be helpful for consideration as well. So as far as the massing, just recognizing the buildings sort of nearby, some of the discussion, there's mid-rise commercial buildings nearby. There's also residential to the north across the street. And then of course the Topgolf developments to the south and sort of just behind this. This would offer that visual buffer from West Broadway, I think as was probably intended when we were sort of imagining the overall site here as well. One point of note here is the commercial buildings to the west, sort of along West Broadway, the opportunity for some screening or buffers, just given the way that this is currently site planned, just sort of giving a little breathing room to those uses, I think would be recommended. And as the applicant mentioned, right now the density is right around 55 units per acre, a total of 682 units across 12.42 acres. The table on page 6 of the staff report kind of includes a breakdown of that. Most notably, this is pretty close to the Owen Road GDP, the USPS, but recognizing, of course, the scale of the acreage is much more here as well. So I think some discussion this evening about the massing, the sort of future use here of the site, the connectivity, the location, and adjacent uses, I think would all be warranted. A couple other items just to mention, potential certified survey map, potentially some boundaries to be adjusted. Of course, stormwater, lighting, landscaping would all come later, but definitely I think some discussion of the activation programming and overall feedback for the park I think would be very useful at this point as well. And this was shared with city department heads. They've been a part of these discussions already, sort of from a very preliminary point of view. And you'll notice there were letters that were provided by both police and fire chiefs as well that are included in the packet. That's everything. Thank you.
And we have Brandon on.
We do. Yes.
Brandon, so I don't forget about you, we're going to start with you since you're on Zoom.
Yeah, I really like this development. I think it's really well cited. I acknowledge the concerns about the elevation of the building, but for the location in the city that it's at, I think it's a really positive development for the area. I don't have any more specific comments about it. I think the plan they've put together is a really good plan. I like the project.
And Brandon, if there's other stuff that you have, when you hear others, just raise your hand or somehow get our attention.
Okay.
All right. John? You want to go first?
First of all, I would commend you in coming in this early. It sounds like things aren't totally figured out, and so I appreciate you looking for feedback on the project. I have no concerns about the use, and I think the scale of the development is somewhat appropriate. I think it will help block the lighting from Topgolf, which I think is a big positive. Even though I'm in favor of the Topgolf project, I think potentially other uses could have gone here that may not have been as positive for the rest of the neighborhood. That being said, I do have some comments that I'd like to share, and you can take them for what they are. The parking counts, I'm a little confused by the table that was created. How I interpret this is that per the housing requirements, the development is 93 spaces short, which is about 20% short. But then there's a line that says there's 273 surface space, or 237 surface spaces, excuse me, for a small amount of retail and a public park. So I'm confused why we don't take 93 of those 237 and put those in the housing project so that we meet the housing requirement, and then have 180 for the retail and the public park. That seems excessive for those two uses.
I would say a lot of uses, a lot of pieces going into this table, but I agree. I interpreted it that way. So the tables that show A1 and A2, buildings A1 and A2 to be underparked is really just the covered stalls, specifically within the building. But the 237, when I mentioned that this loosely meets city standards, was accounting for those and sort of attributing those to the needs of the residential buildings as well. So whether they're at grade allocated for visitors and things like that, but also, so I think that's definitely a worthy discussion. Should these be covered, within the building, the stalls for the residential, or can they be included with the surface parking that's around the perimeter of those buildings too?
Okay. And I think we had another project come in a while back that was sort of the senior housing concept. However, they were getting government funding, because we asked this question specifically. And so, because there was a thought brought up that, what if you sell the development and the next owner says this can be open to anybody, not just seniors or people over 55, that these parking ratios that we talk about suddenly disappear, and then we're underparked.
Mm-hmm.
But they, because they were getting some grants or something, had a 50-year commitment to the senior community. Is this independent of that, or is it tied to?
Yeah, I mean,
this
I
is
think
completely-
we're parking this as if it's a market rate apartment, so we'll
Okay.
either way, but
Okay.
so
So
we're sort of self-regulating the 55 and older, because it's not.
Okay.
We kicked around the idea of doing maybe like 20 or 30% of the senior affordable, and maybe that comes back. There's a lot of complications that go along with that, so we're leaning more towards keeping it straight market rate senior. But it's self-regulated. We're not under any government programs.
Okay. And you agreed with my parking
Yeah, that's our
analysis?
intent. That's our
Okay.
intent.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. Maybe talking about the architecture a little more. I always think these projects are most successful when they have a somewhat defined base, sort of middle and a top. And there's parts of this that do that, and there's parts that don't. And I just think it might be, you might want to take a look at that. You know, a stronger base, and it allows for material changes, color changes, and maybe there's hints of more glass at the top, but then some units don't. The brown colors worry me a little, based on the new condo development that's being built. It appears very drab to me. Just a personal comment. I do like the brighter, lighter brick colors. I do appreciate the recessed balconies. I think that's a higher kind of standard, a higher quality. I think you may want your design team to look at doing a shading study for those terraces, because they're all kind of facing north and surrounded by you know, how much light they're gonna get.
That's the one thing we were just talking about that, is that, you know, depending on where we put the pool,
Yep.
we wanna make sure it's either south or west facing, and, yeah.
And also tied to that is, so am I correct in that this is like a city park? Public park? We keep using the term public park. Is it a private-owned park that the public can use, or is it a public park?
Public park.
Public park, okay. I also think it's, if there's you mentioned moving the buildings a little here and there, but very few of the units can see that park. And I think there might be other ways to maximize that, and also help with your sun, maybe condition. You mentioned that, I mean, this is an incredibly symmetrical plan, and you mentioned it may not end up like that. I do like to hear that it may not end up like that, because, you know, what if phase 2 never happens, or something else happens?
Sure.
You've got it looks like half of a development, you know?
Yeah.
I think there were no dimensions on the plans, but, you know, trying to do a little math, the facades along Broadway appear to be about 450 feet long.
Yeah, I think it's
That's like-
393, is it not, Peter? Or is it 450?
It's 450.
450. Yeah, the interior, I think the interior, yeah.
So that's like 1.25 football fields. You know, there's a very little, other than the recessed balconies, I don't know if there's a way to give some relief to that length.
Mhm.
And I say that, not only on the outside, but the inside, that corridor is, you know, just straight. And
Yeah.
it has the window, that's nice, but it's just something to think about. One trash chute at one end of the L. I don't want to get into your interior planning as much. I think the park's a great idea. I think that's a great amenity that I think would get a lot of use. You know, the food truck concept, I think, is popular. What else do I have? On the, maybe the next round or next time you come back, there's a lot of canopies that I think are articulated well, but they don't appear on any plans, like how far they're going out. And I know, like, the current building that's being built on Winona Drive, it's got some really noticeable canopies that I never noticed. I think that kind of summarizes my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rob?
Where do I start here? I got lots of scribbles. In general, I think it's a appropriate use. I like that there's retail as a component of this. Let me see if I can make some order of this. Yeah, I do support the use. Circulation, I think it's uncomfortable and odd looking at it right now. I tried to kind of envision it with the park. And it made me think a little bit with the reconstruction of West Broadway. Is that a paving project or is that a streetscape redo?
Mainly paving. I think the scope is still being worked out at this point.
Okay.
But generally, I would add more on conservative than sort of a full reconstruction, but it's at least within the window of
Okay.
this time.
To John's point, it's very symmetrical, and it seems like the development was very much influenced by the existing curb cuts on West Broadway. You have this big, long frontage, and that's where the access ended up being, and maybe there's a good reason for that, but with maybe potentially redoing Broadway, and I didn't know if there was other opportunity. I mentioned kind of circulation. I think it's a little bit odd that access off of Kisholt that goes along the south side of the development in front of the WPS building. It does create that connection, and it's nice that it's articulated and it has curves to it and it has parking, all the things to make it uncomfortable for fast transit through there, which I think is a good move. I was totally confused about the parking, so I'm glad we covered that. I think I understand that. And I don't think I have any issues with it, shockingly. As far as the architecture, the overall scale, I think, is appropriate, especially on the Broadway corridor. I don't have concerns about the heights of the buildings. I think there would be some room for a little articulation. I like the mid-building setback. I think that does a lot. As far as materials go, my personal preference is that I think I don't like it as much when the buildings have a base building. This is my opinion. It looks like a building on top of a building, and I think it ties a building together when there's vertical masonry that carries through some, kind of like the current buildings has. That's my opinion on that. Density, I think, looks good. As mentioned in the staff report, I think setbacks could be appropriate as well. I think there's a lot of room for green infrastructure as you develop this plan. I'll leave it at there. I hope there's a lot of consideration to try to put that in there. The park in the middle, I think it's a huge asset, and I also think it's a major point of consideration as you develop this, because there is parking. Depends on what it is. This could get really congested and kind of a uncomfortable space depending on what it is. And what I mean by that is that if it's geared towards children and play and there's a playground and things, I think it's a good thing, but it's also there's gonna be a lot of eyes on it because there's gonna be a lot of visibility. And I think of Bridge Road Park. You put a nice playground there, and every single time you drive by after that was put in, there's rows of cars up and down the street. Like, people go to that park. And I don't have an answer exactly what that should be, but I'm just sharing my thoughts. And also, if there's going to be a senior housing component, and I know these are active seniors, but yeah, having something for them to do, I guess that it's just that finding that proper use. So a lot of care should be done there. And then, the landscaping, whatever, I don't need to comment on that right now. I hope it's great. Is there any concern with lighting conflict with Topgolf into the apartment, into the senior?
Yeah, I mean, we've
Buildings?
certainly thought a lot about that. Remember, all the Topgolf lights are cut off, right? They're
Yeah.
directed downward, so there's,
I didn't know how high they were, though.
Yeah,
So there's a cone of light.
yeah. There will definitely be, some concern there that we're gonna have to take into account.
Okay. And then,
If I can, just the good news is, if you look at the plan, the cutoffs and the lights are faced at enough of an angle, I think, that they're pointed outside of that, the corridor towards the apartments, right?
Okay.
Because the building is, the Topgolf building is placed at just a little bit of an angle away from all of the residential.
Mhm.
Versus, it's not, the buildings are not parallel, right?
yeah,
Topgolf, the apartment buildings are at one plane along Broadway, and then Topgolf is tilted just ever slightly towards the parking garage.
I doubt if it's gonna be an issue, like, there's gonna be beltline lights that you're gonna see from, you're in a city, so I'm not overly concerned, but just something I wanted to mention. And then I would say that I, read the letters from the police department and emergency services, and I don't know who has an answer for those concerns, but they're valid. I'll leave it at that.
We're a growing city.
Yeah, you're right.
And to kind of briefly talk on that, like the concerns as it relates to infrastructure and service and city staff to accommodate, I think that's a discussion definitely for the council when they are looking at that. But this group, can be aware of it and how it fits in, but we're encouraging growth, development, density, and all those things come with, okay, if you got more people, that means you got more calls for service. That's one of the givens. So.
Can I say one more thing,
Yeah.
just because I have all my notes here? The imagery is great. The kind of the east to west parking corridor that goes from phase 1 to phase 2 with 6-story buildings on both sides and just this ever so bit of sidewalk up to the curb and then a little bit of green space. It just seems like kind of a canyon. Maybe that's more perceived in plan than it is in perspective.
Are you talking about the road just south of the main, do you want to pull?
Yeah,
that one up?
yeah. It carries through.
Because the building that's proposed just south of that, the pool deck, or the courtyard is not 6 stories all the way up.
That's 2 stories?
That's 2 stories.
Okay.
Yeah, so, right, yeah, so where the elevated courtyard is, like, let's look at B2, for example, and A2, you have the B2 U-shaped building, which is 6 floors up, but then that elevated courtyard is only 2 floors up.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
1 floor up, sorry.
Yeah.
I think in terms of building structure, and I shouldn't, but it's including the lower level.
1 floor above
Yeah,
ground.
it's 1 floor up. Yeah.
All right, anything else, Rob?
No, thank
We
you.
can always come back to you again, so don't worry.
Oh, good.
Susan?
Well, I also really like a lot about this project, and a lot of what's already been said. I think it is very attractive. I like sticking with kind of the earth tones that you have, and I get nervous about the white now just because we haven't fixed. So I like, but we'll see those materials before we decide on that. I guess this one I'm not really concerned about parking because I think there is enough mixed use that won't be an issue. I am concerned about the density, and I agree this is the last big piece, and the density seems appropriate, but I guess I did really take to heart the police chief and fire chief's concerns, and I've heard that from other people too, when they worry about their taxes going up and worry about the cost of increased services that comes with the growth of population. And yes, we want growth of population. This is like 10%. This is a big chunk if it's full. And I understand that it's a council issue, but I think it's also something we should be aware of and think about. We do that in general. So I do think there should be a traffic analysis done because the circuit, that's a lot. It just strikes me as a lot. And I know when you mentioned currently the access to one city isn't there, that was kind of done intentionally to sort of keep them separate because we were worried about that traffic, I think, too. So I think they need to be brought into the conversation, which was mentioned here, that there has to be some coordination. And I was kind of glad to hear that both Topgolf and WPS have raised, so you're already talking and thinking about that, and it's not that it can't be worked out. But there should be a traffic analysis and maybe an overall service analysis. I don't really know how you do that, but just so there's a better picture given for the city. I mean, it's the kind of, I'm a little torn about the density in that it's not inappropriate for the site as adding to the overall city, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think it's, well, and then just the concern of the traffic circulation that goes with it. Otherwise, I think the park is really good. And I assume, like, if you do the phase 1, would you do something to sort of finish off? Because really the piece that's being done second is the piece that's directly by Topgolf. Just something to level out that land, and so it's not, we're
doing that either way.
You're going to finish that all, yeah. So if it sits there for a while, it would be, yeah.
Topgolf was, the reason it's sitting that way is because Topgolf is using that aggregate for their parking lot base.
Yeah.
But once that's done, that's all getting leveled out.
Sure, no, that'll be fine. Yeah, otherwise, I think it's good. So I think with the help of us seeing a traffic analysis and you working more on the circulation, that would probably solve a lot of my concerns. And thinking through the services piece. But I do like the look of it. I think it's appropriate.
Thank you.
Corinne?
I really think the use is appropriate as well. I got excited when I saw the plans in the packet. And I think it's one of those types of projects that, like the current, it's really important to get it right, because this is the last, as you mentioned, this is like the last big chunk, and it's a nice way to adapt from, like, WPS is done using their property the way that they've been using it for however many decades, and so instead of having that land just sit as green space that isn't really used in such a valuable part of the city, and the office buildings that aren't really being used, I really appreciate that this is a way to think about how to creatively reuse that in a way that really benefits the city. So, and also set the tone for the development. I mean, the McDonald's is out of business, West Marine has got, I mean, there's going to be other stuff that's happening in that corridor. So I think I really like it. Thinking back to some of the other proposals that have come before us for this area, it's like so grateful that we didn't go forward with some of those. So, because that wouldn't have done what this, I think, will do for the city. So, I really like the use. We did talk a lot about the lighting at Topgolf when that came in. I think we saw that 3 times in front of the commission, 3 or 4, I don't remember, but we talked about it a lot. So I hope that, as Steve talked about, the type of lighting that they're using should not be an impact in your apartments, but we did think about that. As far as the way the building looks, it is quite large, and so I think the suggestions that Rob had for thinking about whether you need to use the existing curb cuts, maybe there's a different way to lay out the site, which sounds like you're already thinking about that. It's a little bit difficult to conceptualize it as just the phase 1. I mean, you gave us the materials that show both a phase 1 and a phase 2, but that phase 2, it sounds like it may not look like that, just from the standpoint that WPS isn't sure that they would want the park right in the center the way you have it, and you're thinking about how to reorient the buildings. So it's a little bit hard to think about the circulation point.
I should clarify that. We intend to have the city build the park as part of phase 1. And I think WPS and Topgolf are supportive of the park. I think what they need to still get comfortable with is the circulation around the park. Do we need to, we've looked at ways, do we make that park more circular to improve circulation? Do we need to widen the roads to get them comfortable with circulation? So The only thing that we plan for phase two is kind of the mirrored building that flips, the B2 and the A2.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Let's see, there was, are you the one that did the development, the City View Square over by Jupiter Crossing? Is that your development?
It's not mine.
Okay. You know what I'm talking about, though? Over there, it's over by the Great Dane.
Yes, I
Okay.
do, yep.
Yeah, it is reminiscent a little bit of what you're proposing here, because it is surrounded by street and there's the park in the middle.
Sure.
And they do like the, what I like about the Grand Crossing Park is that the parking is separate from where the park is. So to Rob's point, you know, if people are trying to use the park and a ball goes into the street or whatever, like there's that separation between the use of the park and the parking, whereas that City View Park does have more of the traffic around it. So I don't really have a good suggestion, but I really like the park. It's just a matter of, yeah, thinking about how it's going to be used and how to make that accessible and not just surrounded by cars. I really like the senior living component. I know that that's been something that the city is, since the 2016 comprehensive plan, it's been a consideration for the city, so it does seem like it would help fit a need. What do you do to design a building for an active adult? You had made a comment about that. I'm just curious.
What do we do differently?
Yeah, is there something
Yeah, I
different?
mean, there's all sorts of things that we've been kicking around. I mean, you do make the corridors a little bit, wider. You have handrails in the corridors.
Okay.
You think about things in the building, like one of the things that we've been thinking about is the gym would be a little bit larger in the market rate building. The active adults would be able to use it. And, but the market rate, the other building residents would not be able to use the amenities of the active adult community, right? So we may have, some club room spaces dedicated to program activities throughout the active adult community. That would be just for the active adults. The other residents would not, in the adjacent building would not be able to use that. We've been thinking about, do we figure out a way to incorporate some pickleball courts? Do we incorporate, we're doing a sauna and a cold plunge in another building. We're likely going to do that here. So, there's amenities that I think that active adult resident wants that just aren't available in other buildings right now.
Okay.
That we're thinking hard about.
All right, thanks. The point that Doug had made about the bike access, I mean, that's so close to the Capital City Trail, so thinking
Yeah.
about a way to facilitate bike traffic as well as pedestrian traffic and the cars would be something that I would want to see in the plan. And then, let's see, I agree with Susan's comment about the traffic analysis. I think that would be helpful.
Sure.
Would give the city some comfort in moving forward with the plan with this density. So it is pretty dense, and I also read the comments from the police and fire chief, and it's something that I hope is being addressed. So I think that's it.
Chris?
Well, the use, I think, is appropriate. I appreciate 25,000 square foot of commercial. I'd like more. It's a major commercial hub for Monona. We took out a ton of, or taking on another office building now, plus all the other ones. So if there's a way to work more in there, that would be great, because I think it's a little dense. Overall, we always talk about it, and you need to put in the amenities that people want to stay there, not when it's new, but when it's 10 years and 20 years old. I see a lot of different amenity packages you put in here. I like that a lot. I think the park, back up, the major piece of green space is critical. Now, you have issues either way. If you want to make it a park, you dedicate it to the city, you get credit off of your impact fees towards that, but now it's not credit towards your green space on your site. So then you need to find more green space to hit the standards or reasons that you don't need it. And if it's going to be a park, it needs to be on a public street. And from what I've seen on this site plan, those aren't public streets. And I doubt Public Works, don't don't you, Charlottesville? That's why I'm looking at you. I felt Public Works would accept those as public streets. No, maybe they would.
There's been early conversation of the east-west street being public, and the entryway, the straight north-south. I think we had some initial discussions of those being possibly streets.
Okay.
It's hard to tell in that plan, but those road, I mean, the roads is designed as one lane and 30-foot wide.
Are they? Because
Yeah.
it looks like regular parking lot widths.
Yeah, it's
So
30 feet
maybe it's
wide.
not. I mean, when I look at it, and I'm totally in support of having angle parking or such off of a public road, you know that. I think it's a great use of a public road when you have a low traffic area like this. But that's just things to think about. And then
Absolutely.
If it's public park, again, like I say, you get credit off of your impact fees, but then you don't get credit for it being your green space any more than you do if the roads are public, then the public terraces are not credit for your project for green space. So it's just a thought.
I think my impact fees are based on per unit, so I'm not sure I get credit either way.
Green space?
Maybe
Yeah.
my park impact
For the
fees.
park.
Park impact fees are per unit,
Yeah.
but you also get credit, you pay less if you donate land, that comes off what you
Right,
pay.
right.
So what I'm saying is.
I understand, yeah.
Okay. This isn't the top of my list, but I heard you mention pickleball courts. You play pickleball?
I do,
They're loud.
yeah.
I'm not sure I'd put that next to a bunch of apartments.
Yeah.
That makes I see that'd be really hard to sleep at night.
That's been a topic of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, they're loud. It's a fun sport, and I know seniors especially
Yeah.
love it, but
Yeah.
it's loud.
Yeah.
So that's not my business. Traffic analysis. I don't feel like we need a traffic analysis.
I don't either.
You know, we talked about that, everything, when the bowling alley is potentially gonna convert to a bunch of apartments, and we say, you know, there is less traffic out of apartments than there is on commercial property. And we used to have how many people from WPS working out here? How many thousand?
1,300, I think it was.
It was a lot. And residential traffic isn't that much. And this site, I mean, you're right on Broadway, you're right on the stoplight. If we can't handle it here, it's the same thing you said about Topgolf. If we can't handle it here, it can't handle it anywhere in the city. I just don't, I feel like it'd just be a waste of money to do a traffic analysis. I think there's a lot better things to spend money on here than that. I do think the comments from police and fire chief are important, and I know you say, well, we'll handle it when it comes to the council, but we're gonna see this again and again, probably before it goes to the council. It'd be nice to hear, it'd be nice if the council could talk about it a little bit, and at least say, hey, no, we hit the limit, we're not hiring any more staff. They say, well, then we can't build anymore. Or that the council's supportive of this, or it's nice to have some feedback. I know we can't do anything about what they wrote in their letters, but we're concerned about it. How's that?
That sounds perfect.
Okay. I think we need more masonry. You know, ever since we've had all these discussions about another project that's going to come back and seas of siding and everything, I keep going by that, looking if we had had more masonry coming up higher, it would have helped that. I drive down Park Street a lot, you look at all the new construction on Park Street, there's a nice blend of masonry and different siding types and colors, and I think they've done just great jobs with it. For me, if this is going to happen, this big, up 6 stories above grade, it needs some more masonry coming up into some of that. I think it might, I agree it needs something else, I don't know what that is, but maybe it's dropping the corners a little bit, where you, or articulation in the building, I don't know what it is, but it's a lot of building. I know there's efficiencies in having it all in 2 buildings, but make it look like it's not. I know you're talking about it, I think there's a lot more you could do on that. Ownership, where is the ownership on this? You're talking about, it would help us public roads, because what I'm worried about is we're making WPS and landlocked where they don't even front on a public street. But if you do make one of these a public road that cuts through into their property, that would cut that concern out. So if you're talking about the east-west road, then they front on a public road, because where it looks like now from where the lots would be from the CSM, you could probably propose it. It's like there wouldn't be any, they wouldn't front on a public road anymore, which
Would be a problem.
yeah, it's a bit of an issue. would happen, maybe this is too much of a detail for this point, but there's a major landscape ground sign for WPS right at the entry. Is that still going to be there? So you'll enter the WPS site to get to this site?
Well, I mean, I think that's a topic of discussion. I mean, if you bring up the plan again, you know, what we're proposing is where you enter, that would be a public road. Everything around the park would be a public road.
And then it wouldn't be a.
I know WPS
sign.
would love to have that sign, but I don't know how you put a sign on public property.
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
And then it also leads to my other question, which was when we made a bunch of exceptions for WPS to have multiple landscape ground signs, it's because the size of the campus, there are so many things that don't happen, they don't have anymore. They don't have that stuff. All the things we said, these are reasons to grant those exceptions, they're gone. It's one,
Yeah,
what we're
no, I
building.
think we could certainly do a monument sign on our property north of the patio, right, and have them top bill. I mean, we will have to make WPS happy to get this done, because they control that road. So as part of that, I think they're gonna want some sort of identification on Broadway, and deservingly so, right? They have a very large pile line right now that they would be giving up as part of this.
I might suggest that when you come straight in and you see that building with WPS on the facade, that's pretty good recognition. If I were them, I'd rather keep that sign that's over south of One City Schools. That's really their monument sign, because they don't really qualify for having multiple monument signs anymore. They really don't. And if I were them, I'd want to have that, and have this entry over this beautiful park with the big WPS building. I don't know how much more, I don't know where a landscape ground sign would count that, but what it's worth. Again, I'll say what everybody else has. The parking, the way it was laid out here, is different things in different places, so it was just confusing. But at the end of the day, you've got a handful of stalls more figured than what our code requires, and how you allocate them, we need to see them. And you did talk about building all the surface stalls right away. I don't see how you do that and still build those other buildings. You'd just be hamstringing yourself for construction.
Well, you could put binder down. I mean, we would need to we need to keep the roads. I don't really know. A lot of details we still need to work through, but I know for sure that we would need to build the roads surrounding the park.
Yes.
That's
and
what I'm talking
you need that for
about.
your parking
Right.
anyway, because some of those stalls go into the ratios you need, but certainly that finger going to the west. If you
We
build
wouldn't
it-
do that for sure.
No, and that's part of those 230 stalls. You'd never do that. You'd hamstring yourself. You wouldn't build the parking on the road going around the park opposite the park to the west. You wouldn't build that parking, because again, you'd hamstring yourself for building that building. So I think when it comes back, we'll see a lot more where you're going to be over a little bit for phase one, but if you build phase two, then you'll still be that handful of stalls
Sure.
over, which works well. And as far as the park, again, I said in the beginning, I think it's a really important feature for this. I don't think you could put 682 units here, whatever it's going to be, 1,000 people or it is, without a local park. And I would see this as a local park. I wouldn't see this as a regional park like Grand Crossing is. I would think this would be much more local in tune to this neighborhood. I think that would serve your development. I don't know. Who knows? Jake has a lot of great ideas, but if he has something here that's not in some other park, but I think it's really important with that many residents to have a feature like that. When I first saw it, I was thinking, how you got to put all this in here, and you're going to fit it all and all this. And I have to hand it to you, it's really well thought out. I mean, for saying this is just rough, it's really well thought out. All the things I thought I wouldn't like, it's really good. And the things you put in there, the amenities, I like all the amenities, all the different levels. The top of the parking structure, use that as an amenity space, I think is a great idea. I think multiple level parking is, you had to do to be able to fit this all there. The only way into the lower parking garage though is through the ramp on the upper parking garage. There's no outside entrance, is there?
Right now, so we've got I wish I had a pointer, but where you enter the retail, you can enter there.
Oh, you can?
Yes, yep.
I'm missing that. The retail is
Underneath the elevated
the-
courtyard. There's a
Yeah.
garage door.
So the west end of the A1 building is retail, correct?
This portion.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, there, I see. And can you point, you know where that is, Doug?
I believe,
If you zoom out a little bit more, Doug,
Yep.
there you go.
Sorry.
So where the elevated courtyard is, there's an entrance into the ramp, right?
Okay, and that, but that's still in the same level, isn't it?
Correct.
I don't think,
But it's still, it's not the lower level.
There's a lower level entrance on the
Oh, so
south.
that is lower level where I thought that was still all on that, when I looked at the floor plans, I thought it was all still on the same level.
No, there's two levels. There's the one that you enter
Yep.
right there,
Yep.
and then there's the one that you enter kind of down by the pool.
Under the pool,
Yep.
but that's still in the upper level.
No, that would be in the
The
lower.
pool one goes downstairs.
Oh, okay.
Right, right,
You
right,
do
but then it goes down. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
but
I'm
it's
saying.
still on the same floor. You're up on the first grade
Where
level
you
floor.
enter.
You're not entering the lower level anywhere, correct? Other than through the upper
Correct.
level parking.
Correct.
That's
and
what I thought, that's why I
I
took.
don't believe there is entry to the parking from that dead end.
From what
It's not-
end?
It's not, on A101, it's not showing that.
A100. Yeah, there's no.
Peter, do you want to show the parking plans? Or Doug, maybe you can show.
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
The only way to get to parking.
Yeah, can you go to the
Right,
first
go
floor?
down that ramp that's inside the parking
And
ramp.
maybe,
Okay.
Peter, do you want to just talk
No,
through
I
that?
got
Maybe
it.
you
I just
can-
wanted to make sure
Okay.
I understood.
Yeah.
So that you're entering
There
the
you
upper
go.
level of parking, no matter where you go, you're entering the upper level of parking, and then you're using that ramp to get down in there.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the latest iteration. We've had different iterations in the past where you do have ramps that go down. We figured it just as economical to have just an internal ramp from level 1 to the lower level.
Can you go to the next sheet, please?
Yeah.
So the only entry to the parking that I see is from the lower right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct, yes, that's
Got it,
the entry to park.
You're right, I'm
As-
sorry. We
As Steve
removed that. We
mentioned,
removed that one at the dead end.
yeah, we used to have one coming
Yeah, yeah.
through, but we wanted to really separate the retail from the apartments. So that ended up being where the retail refuse would be.
Right.
So there is an overhead garage there,
Yeah.
door there, but it's not for vehicles to get into the ramp.
Yeah, sorry, we did have an entrance there.
So
We-
what, you have like 400 plus stalls in those two levels, right?
Peter, what is the total count in those two of stalls, just so I don't misspeak?
Give me a second here.
Wouldn't it be that 426, 213 each?
I think it's 341. No, that's the unit stuff.
I think it's 426.
I think it's
Yeah,
426,
426,
based
yeah.
on the stuff you gave us.
Yeah, it's internally we have, it's parked at 1 per bedroom
Right.
for both buildings. I'm pulling up the number right now.
So it's one entrance for 426 stalls. Okay.
Anything else, Chris?
No, I think this is, for conceptual, a very good presentation.
Yeah,
There's been a lot
still
of
early.
thought put in it.
Thank you.
John?
Can we go to the site plan, flip to that? I just have one question. You mentioned Topgolf and WPS are in support of this. Does one city have have they communicated in any way? And while you answer that or think about it, was there any consideration in the park becoming an athletic fields or room for one city? Because they use that area right now, I think. You know, you see all the kids playing flag football or running track, or was there any consideration in doing something like that?
You know, our view on the park is it's really going to be up to the city what that becomes, because, you know, we're intending to donate it to the city. So while we would love to see it, you know, programmed in a way that, you know, helps the city of Monona and our residents, we have offered suggestions, but we ultimately, that's going to be out of our control, in our opinion. WPS has talked to One City pretty extensively about the project, and I'm being told they're in support of it. One thing that they, I think, really do want is this connection to allow traffic to really filter through, through Ingle Street, because right now it's all blocked off. This plan shows some improvements they're actually in the process. They just recently got approved that they're in process of making on the southeast corner of the roundabout to enter their parking, to kind of ease traffic, coming in and out of that ramp right now. But I do know they're very much in support of having these roads be connected so that people that are coming in and out of school can traverse from Ingle to Geshall.
I think that's ironic since WPS is the one that insisted on shutting those off.
Yeah, and I think part of that may have stemmed from just making sure that having that access point didn't prohibit any future developer like me from a different idea or thought on a different access road by putting an easement there in place permanently.
All right, Rob?
I have one more, or two small requests, just as you go through this. I think it would be a very useful exhibit to see the massing of both phases. I know once the model's built, it's built, so
Sure.
taking different angles shouldn't be, not trying to put a big ask on you, but just a massing image of what that would look like if you're driving down Broadway.
Happy
And
to do
then
it.
for the site plan, just a defined phasing line would be, that's pretty simple, right?
Super simple. Yep, happy to do it.
Thank you.
Other questions that come up? Susan?
Well, as to Chris's comments about the traffic study, I'm just wondering where we are with that, because I do remember we did the Owen Road. I guess I was envisioning, if there's a lot of use of Topgolf, there are people coming and going at different times, because, I mean, you're right, that traffic study did show that the residential, people don't all leave at the same time, but once they leave, they're gone, then they come back, it just, there isn't a whole lot of regular daily traffic, and and WPS still has, I know they're keeping that one building, and they're trying to have more people come into work, but they still have a lot of people working remotely as well. So I don't know how much they're concerned with that, but my point being, maybe we don't need that. I mean, I was just envisioning, seeing a lot going on here, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is the commercial use
True.
as well,
Yeah.
and the Owen Road was just residential.
Yeah.
Without knowing what the retail uses will be, I mean, that, maybe they're not that big of traffic generators, or the people that will go to those establishments are gonna be the 600 people that live in these units, and then that's not additional traffic, so, yeah.
Right, yeah.
It's hard to say.
This is at three controlled intersections.
That's
I mean,
true.
True,
If there's a
right,
place that you can filter traffic,
Yeah.
it's-
right.
we would have a traffic analysis study to put in controlled intersections.
Mm-hmm.
We already have the controlled intersections, so there's nothing to study. to
Right,
tell us.
so, yeah,
You can put 3,000 cars in there. Hopefully Florida Decor gets 3,000 cars. That's what they're hoping for. So, Rob, I think you got another, no?
It's, no,
It's mute for now?
it's been said.
Okay. All right. Brandon, did I miss your hand at all?
No, you did not.
Okay.
No, I think it was a good conversation. I really like John's comments.
All right. And Steve, any questions that you have for us that didn't get answered tonight, or any specific pieces of information that were confusing, or you need more details on?
No, I don't think so. A little muddy on if I'm supposed to be engaging a traffic study or not, but
well, that's what I was trying to clarify. I guess
I
from.
vote no.
No.
Yeah,
We've
from my
had-
perspective, probably not, sounds,
Okay.
yeah.
As long as I've been on Plan Commission, we've had different traffic studies for different projects, and none of them have shown that traffic was an issue.
True.
And if,
When there's
to
this
your
much
point, this is on,
residential.
this is on Broadway, if anywhere.
Yeah.
I just,
if it's any
Well-
consolation, WPS did have, I believe, 1,300 employees at one time, and now
Right.
they're at 300 to 400 in that facility, so.
And the problem we had is they all left at the same time. And
Right.
that's what put the pressure on the whole system. People won't leave all at the same time out of this.
Right. Great, no, I think it was a great feedback. I really appreciate the feedback, and we'll take it back and we'll make sure we incorporate it all as we try to finalize our plans.
And Doug, before we close out this section, I know for our guests that are here tonight, notices go out to who and how will people be able to stay informed on as this project moves forward?
Certainly. So as part of this Plan Community Development, the PCD process, all of these meetings will be noticed as a Class 1 notice. So that is put in the local paper, so the Herald Independent, that goes out. There's at least a week's notice. The way the papers fall, it's more like 10 or 11 days for that. So that is a legal submittal that we do every time. We also notice within 200 feet of the parcel as well, which is sort of standard practice. That being said, that is only within municipal boundaries. So that is Monona and will be Monona. And again, with the scale of this, this buffer is a little smaller, or not as far-reaching as others may be, but that is a standard definition or standard distance. But I did share with the resident when they contacted sort of ways they can stay in touch. Obviously, my information to contact to share comments or anything like that certainly can incorporate those, and really just keeping an eye on the packets. And the packets go out a week before. It's all this information is on the city website on the Plan Commission page. So along with the information of how to contact us as well. So. Certainly, I'm sort of the main point of contact that can relay those. And with this, there'll be multiple, I'd imagine multiple hearings here with Plan Commission, and then of course, both of these, GDP and PIP, go to City Council as well. So there's also the opportunity to speak there.
All right, any last questions, comments? Hearing none, we can close our item. Thank you.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
And we can move on to item 8, which is staff report on 1 through 5.
Thank you. So I just wanted to share that the City Council last Monday, I believe, approved the award of the contract for the comprehensive plan, as well as the corridor studies. So I just received an email today about scheduling, beginning to look at the calendar about sort of kickoff meetings and things like that. So we will be sort of addressing that. We do have a ad hoc comprehensive planning committee that is going to be engaged, but certainly the Plan Commission and City Council are all going to be kept in the loop. There's going to be monthly updates that are shared out, sort of where we are in the process. But target right now is to have that completed, fully adopted by the end of 2026. So kind of a 13-month period here, and certainly this area is going to be a large part of that as well. As far as upcoming Plan Commission items, I have a pre-hearing scheduled for the first meeting in December for 1350 Femrite. You may recall that was the storage use closest to Stoughton Road, that current vacant lot. There's a new user there that's being proposed for that space. So coming through for a pre-hearing for that zoning permit to kind of start that process. And I'm also expecting the Bloom siding, the item that was not heard this evening, to come before us for that as well. And possibly one other zoning permit, new business use as well. That's everything that I have.
And I would only share that we're going to go back to our previous ways of doing things prior to COVID, which has to do with material boards and materials being able to be handed around. That used to be pretty standard, and then I think there was just a period of time that we were all trying to figure out how to do life differently, and then that is just one item that didn't come back as strong, and I think we know why it's important that we see and feel the products that developers are wanting to use. So you can expect to see bricks. Any questions from folks? Chris?
Chipotle, they wiped out that landscape ground sign, they got it put back in, but they forgot the landscape. It's been there a long time. It's the fake brick is like that far off the ground, it looks silly sitting there.
Yeah, I will.
That'd be fun.
Yes.
And then, who is the ad hoc committee on the?
Corridor plan?
Yeah, no, on the.
The comp plan,
comp
yes.
plan.
9 members total. I'll share the composition with you. I couldn't recite them all from the top of my head. We have a couple representatives from Plan Commission on there, and the mayor, of course, former Plan Commission chair, is also on there. But we have sort of a broad breadth of folks there, different backgrounds, different representation as well. So they'll sort of be engaged throughout this, but certainly Plan Commission. And a large part of it, from my perspective, and ultimately a couple changes that we made as well, was really the engagement, outreach, and those meetings, the websites, the bringing people along, for that discussion as well, I think is important. None of us want to get to the draft and realize we've gone in the wrong direction or something like that. So I will share that with the commission, the names and of folks that are on that.
Thanks. And I can't remember in the scope, is there periodic times that there'll be presentations for this group officially, or?
So there is definitely, I want to say there's a kickoff. We tried to do joint with council just for efficiencies, but the two groups would meet together, have shared meetings, and I believe it's at minimum a kickoff, and then as we get to the adoption, yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions that folks have? Seeing none? Item 9, motion for adjournment.
I will move adjournment.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Meeting has adjourned.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yep, thank you all. Right.
Who had the hour and a half?